Hi, folks. Thanks for sticking around with us all day, because we know that you started at 8 in the morning. For those just tuning in, I'm Billy Garrettson.
I'm Lars.
And we represent the UI team for Crowfall. And today we're going to talk about two main features that we've been working really hard at revamping and kind of updating since we've had all these cool new changes to the game. So right now we're going to start with the skill tree. If you've played Crowfall, you should be familiar with the skill tree. Skills, our offline skill system is how you kind of train in various categories of the game, whether it be combat or crafting, exploration, and then the various character types that you can be. And so first I'm going to walk through kind of like the evolution of the skill tree to see how we've gotten to where we are, not today, but where we're going to be. So what we're looking at right now on the screen is this was the first kind of mock-up that I did, I'm going to say almost 2 years ago, of the skill tree. And this was back when we didn't have a lot of categories and subcategories and overall tree progression. We basically just had this one flat layer of trees that you could choose from, and they would be like leatherworking, and crafting would be leatherworking, blacksmithing, everything would be kind of at the same level. And so you got all these nodes, and you'd click on the node and you'd go into something similar to what you've seen today, which is this kind of very standard skill grid, and they're all the skills are associated with lines, and you kind of have to progress from one parent skill to its associated child skills, and then you would progress through the tree that way, and at some point you would unlock additional trees and the ability to go with promotion classes and stuff. So this part should look familiar. What we've been doing is we've been iterating on how we're presenting the actual navigation and sort of like the dashboard elements of the skill tree. So here's another peek at kind of where the earliest look and feel of the skill trees, where we had these painted icons and it looked a little bit more traditional to other fantasy MMOs.
Look at your googly eyes.
Now it's just the camera.
Forever.
And so we've definitely gone away from this. So this was draft 1. It was very, very flat and very basic. So draft 2.
Where is it?
Sorry.
I think it's in a video format.
Yeah, so
That
let's
one
get
right there.
Alrighty, so yeah, so draft 2 is what we've kind of been used to seeing in the game for really, I'd say, over a year.
It's been about a year.
Yeah.
Since we redesigned it to this point.
So this is some of the earliest work that Lars did. Basically, what we're looking at here is pretty much the same overall structure. We've got this kind of top line of skill trees that are like your universal skill trees. These are the skills that you can train that every character that you play, no matter what the race or class, will benefit from. And then it's separated, and then underneath the line would be very character specific skills. The benefits would only really apply to certain character categories. So we really didn't change much in this iteration, but what did change over the course of designing the skill trees is that we found that there was a kind of a progression. So like you didn't just jump around to any of the available trees kind of at the top layer. You would actually have to click into one of these buckets, and that would expand the tree into this kind of core tree that you would start off with. It's the basics tree. Almost all of the large nodes expand out to have this one basics starting point, and then once you get to a certain progression in the basics tree, it would then unlock these secondary trees that you can then train in. So when we were first putting this skill navigation front end together, we actually didn't have that structure in place, which is why we kind of just had like flat nav to skill tree. So what we've done in this iteration is we've added a second layer, and it's progression, right? So you kind of have to start at this one node, and then it expands outward into then being able to click through and get into a skill tree. So this is the live game that everyone's who's played the game has seen this version of the skill tree. Also, if you've used our skill trees as they are right now, you've noticed that it's actually pretty frustrating to navigate. there's only one way backwards from the skill tree level. It takes you all the way back to basically the starting point. So we've lost that sense of kind of progression. I've gone from this level navigation into like kind of like a subcategory level into the tree, and then I guess we just never got around to putting that secondary step in, like basically having a back state. So that's something that's like a frustration that has kind of been haunting us for the longest time, and has really driven us to the design that I'm about to show you. So we just take a peek at kind of what you've been seeing, and anyone who's actually been curious enough to click this little magnifying glass in the bottom corner pulls open what we call the quick nav. Basically, this is our workaround for what we finally determined to be a pretty bad design for navigation. We said, okay, we just want to get to the tree that we're looking for. We don't want to have to hunt for things. We don't want to have all these extra clicks. So we basically just open up this thing, and power users who kind of know where they want to go, they could just find the tree that they're looking for, click on it, and they go straight to the tree. So we did find that solution, while it was a Band-Aid, it was pretty useful, right? So we wanted to retain that element in the new design while addressing some of the problems of this previous design. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna jump into where we are now. So this is an animated mock-up. We just started this recently. What we like to do before we build a UI inside of Unity, a lot of times it's really helpful to do a full round trip mock-up video, right? That has some flow and some animation to it, so that we have a better idea of how the navigation is going to feel, what the timing is going to be like when you go back and forth between screens, and just get a general sense of how the information, basically gets fed to the player.
Get an idea of what works and what doesn't before we actually invest tech resources into making it.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to change your mind when you're in Illustrator or in After Effects than it is in Unity, especially when you start hooking it up and the engineering teammates get involved. It gets really expensive to change your mind and iterate at that point. So it's really helpful for us to iterate beforehand. So the idea now, when we come into the new skill tree, is that very, very similar to the previous design, we've broken up the skills in various categories, but already from the top level, we want to show you a sense of kind of information, like high level information. So this panel that's on the left side of the screen, that's a persistent panel. So you're not going to have to tooltip on everything to get certain high level concepts and to figure out kind of what level you're at in the skill tree navigation. We still have the buckets broken up, but now we've basically rearranged things to where you no longer have a sense of this division between kind of like universal and archetype. We've gone away with the archetype model. Now we have race and class. That's a newish development, and that's a development that's actually affected pretty much every UI in sometimes subtle ways, but other times incredibly fundamental ways, like the skill tree. So the idea was like you'd still have this high level kind of landing screen, but we want it to be very simple. So it's like you kind of can only click on 5 things, right? And once you've clicked through, what we've done now is we've set up this second layer of navigation to where we're showing you without any ambiguity the connection between all of the trees within a category. So before, we found that a lot of people were really confused when they clicked through and they saw that one kind of large node that was the basics node for a lot of these categories. People didn't even know that was clickable because it kind of looked like it was just another kind of category icon with clickables around it, right? So what we wanted to do is make it very, very clear that this is basically a tree of trees, right? So there is a progression from the basics tree that then branches out and then branches out further. And it's really important for people who have like kind of like this metagame of progressing through all the skill trees and making progress in every single one of them to get a high level view. yes, it's very important to go to the micro level and kind of micromanage your individual skill training. But if you want to zoom out a little bit, you want to get a really good sense of where you're at within a given category. So that's what was missing in the last navigation design. And so, we didn't overthink this screen at all. We just thought, hey, what made a lot of sense in the previous design, especially, was just the actual skill tree itself. It was very clear, what the different nodes were. It was very clear through the connector lines what was a requisite kind of skill to train before you could get to new skills. And so we took that model and we basically just applied it to the tree progression. And so, that change should help a lot of people who create these like long-term goals. They can kind of see the general structure and progress through their training. And so this portion of it, like you'll notice, like if you've been familiar with our previous skill trees, we haven't reinvented the structure of how these trees are going to be built, but we are trying to make improvements to the colors we're using, the line visualization we're using, and just the general feedback, because that's what we want, to empower the player with, is just instant feedback. The minute you look at something, you kind of understand where you are, where you want to be, and then that way you can make these long-term goals for yourself. And just
Sorry, they said it was really pretty. I just wanted you guys to know that they very much enjoyed the look of the new skill tree.
Thank you. Also, thanks. It's been a tough. I guess it's been a tough few months going back and forth, and we've changed the visual package tremendously. The fonts we're using, the color schemes we're using. We're trying to make this thing a little bit more modern, a little bit just a little sexier all around. And for folks who've been used to seeing the game look a certain way for so many years, then all of a sudden a lot of the big features are changing. It's a little tough, some people don't like change, but we think, we're not, us internally, we're not married to anything. I mean, we change stuff all the time, and this is a lot of stuff that the player would actually never see. We're so open and transparent with our development that you get to see all of the iteration, and you get to play the iteration. Sometimes it ain't great, and it sucks for us because we want it to be good, and we know, like, you guys have criticism. We know for sure internally there's a lot of things that we could be doing better, and it's just a matter of when we get to it, and we're finally getting to the point where we can make skills where we really want them. Pressing on. Small change, but will be hopefully a really big crowd pleaser, is the inclusion of a back button. So now you can just go back one step and get back to your second layer navigation without having to go all the way back home. For the people who want to go all the way back home, guess what? There's a home button. And for the power user who really enjoyed having that long list of available trees, well, we've done you one better. We've put in a full tree navigation panel that you can toggle on, and it basically takes over the info pane. So it doesn't cover up any of the skill tree. Basically, in this design, what we try to do is give the skill tree its own space to live. Any progression information, any narrative text and all that kind of stuff, it's going to go in the info panel. Because that was also another thing that was really bad about our last skill tree design, was that it was cluttered, and there was a lot of layering of like static screen elements mixed in with scrolling screen elements, and sometimes it was really difficult to just read the tree. So we've given the tree its own space to live. So if we look really closely at basically the power user Explorer panel that we've opened up here on the side, it allows you to navigate from anywhere in the skill tree to any other place in the skill tree. You don't have to go back a step or go up to home to switch categories. You literally can jump from anywhere you are. And what we're going to try to do is make it to where the back button will is a contextual back button. So no matter where you are, it'll back you up to where you just came from. That way, you don't get lost. Think of it a lot more closely aligned to like a web browser, where you can, have a lot more dynamic navigation and a much more fluid navigation. Also in that side panel, we will be giving the player progression information. So they'll be able to see if there is a tree that they can train in, it will have a progress bar. So you'll notice there's a lot of trees within this navigation pane that don't have that progress bar, and that's to let you know you can navigate to this tree, but you actually can't train in it, right? So we're just trying to give you, no matter where you are, no matter what view you're in, you're getting the information that you need in order to make really good decisions without having to like get lost in the navigation, which, I mean, I think that was the core flaw of the last design, was that navigation was such a pain and it was very, very easy to lose your place.
So as soon as you said back button, the chat just lit up with people being excited about it. So, is there, I figure maybe you guys are going to touch on this, but is there a way to tell, just based on the connectors, whether they need all of the previous things trained or just one of them, or is that mostly going to be in the...
Are we talking about the skills or the trees?
The skills.
So the requirements for what needs to be trained to lead on to another one, we still have some framing elements that kind of have different shapes that go around the nodes that I think they just aren't in here right now.
Yeah.
But it's going to work very similar. Like, I think it's like a hexagon if you need to train two skills that go into one. It's like a little pointy thing that shows if it's going to unlock a tree somewhere totally different in the hierarchy.
There's certain quirks with the design that, I think we're just going to have to address once we've gotten to this step where the navigation looks really nice. We'll probably fine-tune the framing and the visuals of the skill nodes themselves. In a lot of skill trees or tech trees and stuff, you basically it's just like, hey, anything that's connected to anything, you go in a linear fashion. You have to train this in order to unlock this, unlock this. I think what these guys are talking about right now is the fact that there are certain conditions where two skills can be parented to another skill, but only one of them has to be trained in order to unlock the child. So I'd say how typical is that?
Typical in other games?
No, in our game. Like, how many instances of that?
I'd say you probably usually find like 3 or so in the average tree.
Per tree, yeah. Yeah, so it's more of an exception than a rule, and so I think we just have to address that once we get there. Like, the big goal right now is to just make the navigation flow in a way that we say, hey, yeah, like, that's the game. We'll ship that and we'll be happy with that, and the next step after that would be revisiting the skill nodes and, I guess, just improving the feedback for the visuals there. Yeah, so the rest of the mock is just, navigating back, and that's that. Yeah, so what time are we at? Yeah, we're good.
27 minutes, not bad.
I guess before we switch gears, so that's the skill tree. What I'll do is I'll leave, let me leave this guy up. This is probably the newest screen that might be important to people who want to understand that you're not just navigating to one-off trees to train skills in a progression. You're actually training trees in a progression as well. That was something that even at the early stages, I don't know that I fully understood. And once I understood the design, which has actually been really helpful lately when we split up the archetypes into races and classes, that began a discussion of how else we could break up other systems and other presentation, and that's what led to us getting the chance to redesign the skill navigation. And so I'm really happy that happened. It was a lot of work, but I'm really happy that it happened, because now it can be good. So before we switch gears, we're going to talk about the powers management UI in just a second. But before we leave, I want to field any questions about the skill tree or skills and in general.
Do we have any sort of ETA on when this might go out to them for testing? The new skill tree, I mean?
I mean, like soon, like I'd say months, couple months.
Months.
That's a safe answer.
I mean, this year.
Yeah.
Yes, this year
No,
absolutely.
I don't want to I don't want to disappoint anyone and say too long, and I don't want to get anyone's hopes up like it's going to happen next week. So the benefit of getting it this far, where we have a mock-up and we're getting a chance to show you guys, and you know Todd likes it and stuff. The benefit of that is like there's just momentum and buzz behind it. So us getting this to the point where it could be interactive inside of Unity, that's only a few days work for us, but we have to be mindful of our engineers. We've got a lot of battles on a lot of fronts right now, and so this is just one of them. And so it's a matter of how soon.
So the engineers are slow.
I mean, no.
They're watching the stream, so.
No, our engineers are world class. There's just only a handful of them.
There's just so much to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to be a 5-3 thing.
We'll say I'll volunteer since Susie loves the skill tree so much. I volunteer Susie to be our liaison. If she doesn't handle it herself, I hope that she would at least be involved on the handoff.
The plan is to show required trained skills on a skill tooltip that's actually on my to-do list.
Yeah.
Will the crafting trees remain basically the same?
In what regards? It's the configuration?
I don't know. That was the question.
I don't know if any changes to the actual trees.
So
they're literally trees now.
Whether anyone realizes it or not, the skill trees that are in the game right now, like their structure is this structure right here. That's, like I said, that's the main drawback of the current design, is that you don't get a sense of this progression between trees. You don't get a sense that you have to start at the basics tree and then you go from there to then diverge into, like for instance, in this mock-up of the combat tree, the tree of trees, everyone starts off at the basics level. Once you get to a certain progression point in that tree, we then allow you to then diverge and to say, okay, I'm going to focus on armor or weapons, right? You go weapons and you basically give up, the progression you'd get in armor and vice versa. And there could be plenty of people who say, you know what, I'm not ready to decide. So what I'll do instead is I'll continue to train in combat basics and get little progress incrementally to both armor and weapons. So really, that's been the model. We just haven't been able to present it in a way that people get that, right? Everything feels really flat. So in terms of the actual tree layouts, like the skill nodes and stuff, that's really up to Mark Hallish and Blair as they continue to work out and balance the skills. I mean, skills are a very dynamic system right now. The entire layout of the tree is dynamic. It's all data driven, and so they're going to be hammering the specifics of the trees themselves, probably through ship and then beyond. So luckily, our part is just making sure that it's got a logical navigation, that it's pretty.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
The stealth tree used to be under combat. Has it been moved to a new major tree? Was it fully removed?
Ooh, that's a.
Is it under like races and classes?
That's a Blair question. I don't know where it is, but I don't believe it's been removed.
Okay.
Like yeah, stealth is a huge.
It would be removed
No,
at all.
stealth is a huge system within our game.
Right.
So it's there. I just don't know where it lives. So the biggest change has happened in breaking up the archetypes. DPS, ranged, support, and specialist. Sorry. Tank, DPS, specialist, and support. We broke all those. Those are all blown away and redistributed between the various trunks within the race category and various trunks within the class category. So if you look kind of at our highest level navigation, what we used to have was 3 universal categories, and then we had 4 archetype specific categories, right? What we've done now is we've actually condensed that to total 5 instead of 7. And so anything that used to live in the archetypes those still exist in some form. They've just been redistributed within the race and class. And I don't believe we're ready to talk about how just yet, because I believe it's still being worked on.
We'll do, I guess, one more before you guys want to switch gears.
Sure.
Is there going to be any sound introduced to the game UI, or will there be like haptic feedback effects on mouse click and mouse over? Maybe.
Someday.
Like Rumble?
Mouse Rumble would be awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, like the full UI package for the shipped game will include really nice audio feedback as well, you know, for all states, really, for, you know, hovering, successful click-through, unsuccessful click-through, just so that there's a bit of feedback to let you know that something is interactive but not accessible. It's just another one of those things where we just haven't had the time or the resources to put towards it. But, you know, and I know what it's like to bring in a composer, a musician, and a sound engineer early on in a project. It does fundamentally change how you approach the art direction and stuff, because it's this full scope collaboration. No, I understand. It's just the approach that we've had to take is more rapid iteration on getting things just in the game functional, and then we come back and we do the polish pass. So hopefully, as you've seen, as you've seen these mock-ups and stuff up through the current design, you've seen that every step it's gotten just a little bit better looking. Every step it's gotten a little bit more polished. So I imagine this new design is going to have a lot more attention paid to audio.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah.
You guys are
All right.
switch gears.
All right. Yeah.
Now it's Senor Lars's
Go back.
time.
There, powers. All right. All right, we'll start over here. So I'm just going to kind of take you guys through a history of what the powers trees have looked like. This was kind of an early mock-up. When would you say this was from?
This is when we unveiled the Confessor. That was over 2 years ago.
2 years
I think
ago.
at this point, this was the spring of 2015.
Wow. Okay.
So someone fact check me. I don't know. I'm just kind of guessing.
It was before I was here.
I've lost all track of time. Like, I've been here for over 3 years working on Crowfall, and it doesn't feel like 3 years at all, man.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's crazy.
How long has it been?
When did we unveil the Confessor?
2015,
Yeah.
2 years ago.
So roughly 2 years ago.
Yeah, because you can clearly see the icon design for all of these has definitely been changed a lot.
Yeah, we're going to see the evolution of the icons as we go through these power trees.
Right. But what was kind of cool about this screen and the subsequent screens that we've released for all of the different types of archetypes is that you can see the combo trees, you know, in this image, and that's something we could never really do in game. And so these are just kind of some more examples here. It's a little newer of a more modern style.
I think some of these graphics were developed. Basically, you joined the team right around the time we updated the icon style to this version that we're looking at here, where it relies less on painterly kind of representation of the power, and it does a lot more kind of graphic design. We pick a central icon or concept. We build the icon around that, and then we use the framing and color to tell you whether it's a buff, a debuff, an attack, a ranged attack, a CC ability, etc. But just to reiterate what you were saying before, what was really helpful about these layouts was that in one glance, you saw your full character's capabilities. And you also saw where there were additional capabilities, such as your empty slots and stuff. So it was just a really great way to get this overview of your character.
Right, you're not missing anything in this kind of view. You don't have to hover over to get tooltips. And, I mean, we couldn't because this wasn't in game. But, here's an example of kind of the, just I guess the graphic shift to some of the newer like typefaces, newer design principles that we've been using.
Yeah.
Kind of this is our most recent example.
Well, and really, these images are just really to show the evolution of how we've presented powers.
Right.
just in general, and now we're about to see the UI aspect.
So this was like 2 years ago or something before I joined. You said this was the first version of the power screen?
Yeah. The folks that have been with us for a while, they know kind of the philosophical debate we've had between a full screen takeover UI scheme versus a floating window UI scheme. And what we mean by that is that, you know, whenever you're not running around as a character and you pull up a UI, we would basically take over the entire screen and fill it with, you know, your inventory and stuff, versus a more traditional MMO model where you've got just these draggable floating windows that you could just continue to see the 3D world while you're managing your UI. And for ease of use, on our side, we chose the takeover model because, you know, a lot of games can get away with it. You know, ESO has a similar kind of takeover model, and we were studying other games, and we didn't think it was going to be that controversial, but it actually was. It created a rift inside the company. It created a rift outside the company in the community. So we just decided, hey, you know, over time, we all just kind of realized that floating window in general was just the better solution for a lot of our gameplay and design. So we went away from this. I guess maybe a year ago, a little over a year ago.
It was about well, no, not quite a year ago.
We stayed with the takeover design for a while.
It was still like that when I was here.
Yeah.
Started a year ago.
Yeah.
We stuck to it until we decided it just didn't hold up.
I mean, we just all fell out of love with it. So.
So this looks like there's the first kind of version of a floating window design for the powers. And what we had here was the power screen and then a kind of tooltip, except it was always attached to the window, so it kind of was always blocking a lot of view.
Think of it as a spellbook. Like other RPGs, they have like a spellbook UI where you've got kind of a grid of objects, and you've got like a static info pane that would update based on the thing that you had selected.
Right, and it was a good start for bringing this design into a floating window design and getting it in front of the players quickly.
Well, real quick, take note too, the earliest stages of us beginning to segment the power bar at the very bottom. So this is the first version of us playing around with being able to drag powers from the UI into your tray. And as we were building this, we started to realize, you know, not every power can go in every slot. We don't have just like a universal, you know, power tray. We've created these very specific buckets for your special abilities, your kind of basic abilities, which are, you know, your mouse clicks and stuff, and then you've got like a retaliate. And I forgot, is the ultimate power considered? Yeah, ultimate's part of the standard bracket. You've got your passives and retaliate.
Currently it is.
Basically, as we started to get further into the game's development, we started realizing these like common categories that all the powers always fell in, and we were always representing them in that specific way in the power tray. And so this is like the earliest stages of us just really obviously visually bracketing those things, and you'll see how that's going to evolve moving forward.
And so this should look familiar to anyone who's playing the game right now. This is more or less exactly what you see in the game.
Yeah.
And here we kind of started to, you know, as Billy was saying, bucket it up more. You know, this bucket kind of matches to this one, this bucket to this, and so on. What this didn't allow for is kind of the current design, and I think what we're going to now with the race class idea. Go ahead.
Talk about the tooltip, how we try to address the combo chains in a really quick at a glance way.
Right. So I think we actually had this in the previous mock-up over here. Yeah, you can kind of see that. You can see the chain is built inside of this, and this is how we were trying to just quickly display on hover any of these icons what it leads to. So what we're doing here is basically showing the icon that you're hovering over, what it does, all of its information, And then underneath that is the combo tree. And so you kind of have to look at like this icon and see which one all of these match to. And this is just kind of a nice, it's kind of like a dictionary of you're matching the icon to the description below. And it works. Like it was something that definitely made a lot more sense than this one, which...
Well, it's faster for one. You didn't have to click on anything. It was on hover. Basically, those early mock-ups of like the power trees, we took the vertical kind of layout and just laid it on its side so that it could fit in a tooltip. One of the drawbacks of something like this is that it actually takes up a lot of screen real estate, you know, the tooltip, and you do have to kind of hunt. You know, there's a common thread of what we've tried to redesign and make better is we wanted to remove the hunt. A lot of times you actually have to like actively look for information that's really, really important. And the problem with that is that people tend to lose the information that's really important because they just didn't know it was there. They didn't know what to look for.
Right.
And so this is where we did start to try to pre-categorize your power types. But even here, it's not incredibly obvious that if you see the cursor on screen right now, like this bucket right here that has there's 3 buckets on top of one another. This is like, you know, your special actions. This is your retaliate actions. These are passive abilities. They're all kind of in a vertical layout, but they align to a horizontal layout of bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3. So, you know, all of these were like really, they were just half steps. And I think what we eventually came to, I mean, the two of us, we like to put our heads together a lot and just kind of, you know, just tear down any of our existing designs. I mean, it's frustrating to some because it looks like we're starting over a whole lot, but in a lot of ways, we've already gained so much ground from the previous design that we're very, very far ahead the minute we start off on a new design, because we already know what works and we know what doesn't work. And so we focus on the things that don't work and try to keep as much of the good stuff as we go forward.
We should also point out too that just the nature of having all of these buckets built into the power window was something that was kind of put together as something that it was a proof of concept, and we knew that it worked and we could get it in front of the players. But we heard a lot of feedback of people being confused about, you know, well, they see their power bar kind of behind this when they're playing the game, and then they see this power bar show up, and a lot of people just didn't know, where do we drag these things into? They were trying to drag it into the regular power bar, and it wasn't clearly obvious that this was the area that it was intended for. So I think that brings us to what we've been working on over the past several weeks, which is a redesign that looks something along the lines of this.
It's kind of taking a little bit of every design and mashing it together into what we think is going to be like really the best of all worlds.
Right. So it's clearly taking a lot of inspiration from the early screenshots that Billy made of all of the different powers and their combo trees going out of them. So here, that was one of the clear goals, is we wanted to be able to show all of the information that was super pertinent to the player without having to tooltip. So you're seeing all of these powers, and you can hover over all of these and, you know, get a tooltip, kind of like you saw before. But you don't have to hunt and start matching things together to understand how to use these powers and how to, you know, it takes a lot of time out of building your power set and deciding what you want. And it lets you kind of iterate, maybe try some powers out and quickly go back and edit.
And everything in this design is draggable, so you can drag a parent to any other kind of key assignment slot, and, you know, the children will go with it. It's very intuitive. What I think is the best aspect of this design is how we have now put the selectable powers in the grid completely aligned with their associated bars.
Right.
So it's hopefully no longer ambiguous where a power can go, where it belongs. And I think that is super duper important. I mean, outright said it, but I'm sure many of you have already deduced that this is now less of a floating window, and this is a management screen. This is a standalone takeover screen. It will, you know, cover up some of the screen underneath it, but the benefits you get from it are much bigger. Like, now that we've got so many discipline runes, and each one of those runes can affect anything from stats to new available powers that you can slot, the options that any player will have are going to be so much bigger than we ever initially planned for. So it kind of is a different mode. Like, power management mode is something you go into because it's very, very high level, and it's important. You don't make these decisions quickly on the fly. And so, you know, we kind of need the screen, you know, dedicated to this mode in order to more effectively manage your powers.
Right, there's a lot of information, and before we were kind of trying to cram it into just a part of the screen, and the problem is that part of the screen was conflicting with all the other stuff that you're going to have on the combat HUD, and it was confusing players. So we said, you know, why not make it its own thing so that you're not confused what the focus of the game is, what the player is supposed to be looking at in this moment.
Yeah. Yep. And then very quickly you can switch between your different trays.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you.
Yeah.
And that over there is going to allow you to just swap between trays. So
Yep.
Cool.
Do you have a mock-up of the new power tray on screen as well?
I have it in Unity.
Sure.
Wanna show
So
you?
it's not even just the power management screen that we are overhauling. We're completely rebuilding the power tray itself. You know, from a visual standpoint, it's going to look a lot like the existing power tray, but what we've done now is we're going to make it a lot more dynamic and give it a lot more feedback. So you're going to have a lot more visual states for whether power's on cooldown, whether it's toggled on or off, because that's a fairly new thing. You know, recently we've added the ability to have toggle powers, which was not an existing design from before. We also found that, I mean, just the way that we had powers set up, they would get into broken states a lot. Like, you'd be in combat, but you wouldn't know it because your tray would look shrunken down. You might have suppressed powers, but you'd never know it because the state didn't trigger properly.
Right.
And so we finally just gone through and we're just going to make it good. We know the feedback that we want the players to have, and we're building it in. And what's nice now too is the fact that you can have, I mean, n number of trays. Like, before we had built everything to house 2 trays only, but now we've opened the door to having specialized trays, multiple specialized trays depending on what race, class, and discipline combos you have. And so what we've done now is we've just tried to build a much more dynamic system for tray management that ties into the power management.
Right.
Are there skill filters in the frameworks, like you would be able to filter skills by their power type and stuff like that? I don't know if you guys know about that potentially.
Talk about, like, what, for skill trees or for powers?
For loading out your powers, so like being able to filter by, I don't know, crushing damage or different types of skills.
That's pretty specialized. You know what I mean? Like, what we attempt to do is we try to, at a glance, from color, shape, and just core icon in the power icon design, we try to give you really those broad strokes, whether it's a melee attack versus a ranged attack versus a buff versus an ultimate or a passive. When it comes to things like crushing damage, I mean, we might be able to, like, pre-categorize things, but, you know, as we were trying to solve a design problem today with Blair, and it boiled down to us not being able to really take much action because the answer was, it's going to be different for every player. And so it's really difficult for us to initially anticipate what the needs are going to be. So what we might have to do is put out this rev and see what the feedback is. Because you may not need to know the difference between something that has piercing damage and crushing damage, because it just may be implied or inherent, or it may not be important in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of a non-answer, but we're just gonna have to wait and see for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right now, again, I don't know if you actually know the answer to this one. Right now, you cannot change trays while on the global cooldown. Will you be able to after this?
Design question.
design question.
Yeah, yeah.
I figured as much.
Right. Yeah.
I'll say, yeah, just unsure. You wanna show some visual state stuff?
Yeah. So like that is kind of just, you can do kind of the same thing as make it smaller or bigger depending on if it's active or not, if you're in combat mode. I think it's on this one. You know, you'll get some feedback for when you're switching states. Hopefully we'll just have some animation like this instead of just swapping it out.
Talk about
So you
switching
can kind of-
trays.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I can show some of the power items if they'll show up. Like, we redesigned these to have a lot more feedback, so there's some particles in the UI space that we're playing with to show things like, this is kind of just a subtle glow. I don't know if it's showing up.
It may not
but-
show up, but you can scale the game window
That's a good point.
and then see if you can pan down to it. Does it let you?
You have about 5 minutes left, just so you know.
Does not let me. That's weird.
What about in scene view? Actually, scene view is probably crummy. Or not. Okay.
Scene view will be fine.
All right, cool.
So yeah, you can kind of see, and you would see this kind of feedback anywhere that you see this power. And the idea is just, it's coming from a discipline. It's not something that we want to call out too much attention to because it's not super important, but it is kind of nice to know when it's like you got that thing from something that you crafted.
So what you're saying is we would have a special effect on discipline powers
Right.
so that you knew the difference between kind of like a standard kind of comes with my body power versus an augmented power that came from a discipline stone.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes you feel a little better that you
Yeah,
have this
sure.
kind of special power.
Yeah, especially think about the management window where, a small handful of the powers that were available to you in those buckets, a couple of them would have sparklies on them, and so
Right.
they just feel cooler and more
Right.
special.
You'd feel so much better about yourself with
You know.
all those sparkles.
Hey, man,
Right?
particles to save the world.
Yeah.
All right, what else can a power look like?
Power could look like that. It could be in cooldown state.
Cooldown, we all know about cooldown states.
Yeah. It could be disabled if
Oh.
something's wrong with it.
See,
Can't
if
use
it's
it
black,
now.
if it's black with no number, you know you can't use it.
You messed up. Let's see. That's
Yeah.
yeah. That would happen if your ultimate power would happen if there's like ultimate
Ooh.
power.
Yeah, so
That's ready.
anyone who's sick and tired of like that really garish blinking circle that happens behind your ultimate power, this is way, way prettier.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you agree.
Yeah. It could be suppressed. You just get
Yeah.
a nice big like bunch of cracks down the middle.
Here's some production art
broken.
nerdery here. What's neat about the way that Lars has this set up is that the texture for like the crack for the power to make it look like it's kind of cracked and disabled. We have a library of crack shapes, and so those all be randomized at the time that the thing is turned on. So it should look a little cooler and not so canned, you know.
Right.
It's just an art nerd kind of thing that I'm excited about. I always like dynamic art that has some hand touches, but then has some cool, mathematical or procedural kind of aspect to it.
Absolutely, yeah. And like toggled, if it's a toggled power, change this to 1, and you'll see brackets around your number, and that's how you know that that's a power you toggle on and off. So then if it is toggled, you'd basically be seeing this, this kind of blue bar. Maybe we'll change the color, but basically this would be showing how close you are to the power being active again so that you can use it.
Yeah, so when a
That's
power
nice.
is toggled on, it basically, it fires off at a certain rate, right? So this bar would, I think, you would
Right.
fire off the power and then the bar would kind of count down, and then when it's depleted, it would fire off again. And basically, you're just, as long as this thing is toggled on, it will continually fire and fire and fire at a certain rate. So that'll be kind of your what's the word? That's your clue. It's your
Yeah.
key to know that it's on.
Right. And also, if the icon is just kind of floating higher than the others, you're like, that's definitely toggled on.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Notice that we don't rely a whole lot on like say color. We really think that first of all, monitor calibrations, color blindness, and just in general, perception of color is just a non-universal thing between players. So we're using things like motion, scale, animation, things like that to call attention to the state of the power versus color alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to have, I guess, more powerful keyboard control to being able to switch between multiple trays. So I think the way it's mocked up right now is I think you'll have a dedicated button for each tray. It's mocked up with like the same button there, but I think the idea is you can go from one tray to another tray, assuming that it's not on a cooldown. You can move from one tray to another non-linearly. So that should be pretty cool for power users.
Right. Yeah.
Anywho,
questions?
Yeah, we're running low on time. We're about to get to our last segment, so you got us for another minute or two.
Still 183 people in the viewing this. It's very
Hey,
nice.
do you like redoing the same kind of like feature multiple times?
You know, I could say something really sarcastic, but I do.
Yeah,
it's actually really nice to see it get a lot better every time.
It's a loaded question, but yeah, that is the answer. The answer is every time you put something out, you always know what you could have done better. And so each time we come back to these things, it's like this huge relief and this wave of excitement because it's like a chance to, I don't know, make it good, you know?
Make it good again.
We're going to make the UI great again.
Absolutely.
So I know you guys touched on this a little bit, but customizable icons or colors, yes or no?
Colors is a weird one. Because our colors are incredibly specific for the communication of what a skill is and what it does. If we added that feature, so it's a non-trivial amount of work to separate all those sprites into tintable layers for the color portions of them. If we did that, then it would just be like a global, like, hey, the red that we chose for offensive attacks and abilities, you would maybe just have like a swatch picker that would change all instances of that specific color. Just because those colors actually mean something specific in our game. It's not just, hey, red makes sense for this because it's fire, that kind of thing.
Right. And color blindness modes will also change the colors.
Accessibility features are one of these things where we're building our modules to be accessibility ready, right? Obviously, we're trying to harden the designs before we go in and make those customizable features because it's a lot of misplaced work if we end up having to redesign a big module again because it's like having to do that work over and over and over. So what we're trying to do is we're just trying to get things to a place where we can say, yeah, this is the shipping version, and then that's when we can start adding all those really cool accessibility features that I know I'd be happy to add.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Wrap it up.
Yep, you guys are good to wrap it up.
Cool.
I have a video I can show, so as soon as you guys wrap it up,
Well,
we can do that. And
perfect.
Thanks for sticking around
Yeah.
and hearing us talk, and hopefully you're excited about the new changes, and we're going to try to get them in as soon as possible. We're working real hard, so
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see you in game.
Cool. Thanks for sticking around.